tonight, Kara, I thought we would talk about, one of the things we'd talk about is an article that I found that I thought was really quite interesting about paranormal, but not about paranormal.
Explain.
I will explain. I'll explain by explaining/reading some of the article. In an article titled "Ghost Hunters Say This Is Their Biggest Fear and It Has Nothing to Do with Ghosts" from CNN, the biggest fear for ghost hunters is discussed, and as the title suggests, it's not ghosts. It's not demons either. It's people. Yes, people, crazy, shady people. In the interview, the paranormal investigator says the living are more scary than dead due to mentally ill people who physically attack investigators during house calls, unscrupulous investigators who stage supernatural encounters, criminals robbing and beating ghost hunting teams in abandoned buildings, and then there's another little known occupational hazard, the sheer terror of tedium. Then the article goes on to cover situations that ghost hunters can find themselves in.
Okay.
So...
I don't know that the sheer terror of tedium
I just thought it was
thing.
a funny
That's a little strange, but I imagine there is quite a bit of boredom.
I hadn't thought about that. I hadn't thought about, the literal hours of basically walking around, poking corners of a dark room with a stick for literally 6 hours in a night. You got to be really committed to standing around in the dark and...
It's like being a beta tester for a video game, I think. Everyone thinks that'd be really fun, but you're actually just spending that whole time just having your character walk into a wall or something, just testing every inch of the room.
And accomplishing nothing. Like, you beat the level, it crashed. It's like, great.
Yeah. But no, that makes sense to me, because whenever we hear about ghosts, and whenever we ask, can they hurt you? What's the scariest thing a ghost has done to you? Sometimes we get told they can't hurt you at all. They're just images. But usually we get something like, I got knocked across the room, or I got scratched on my back or something.
Right. Yeah.
A human could knock you across the room.
That's true.
And a human can stab you in the face. Maybe. I mean, a human is much scarier than a ghost.
Yeah, maybe that needs to be one of our standard questions, is basically, what's your scariest run-in with a crackhead squatter?
Yeah. Because, we've had stories about demons trying to push people downstairs or something, but and of course, as skeptics, every time we hear that, we go, I don't know, maybe. But when they say, a crackhead chased me 3 blocks with a metal tube from a vacuum cleaner, that sounds very plausible.
I'm going to probably believe that.
The detail about the vacuum cleaner, they didn't make that up.
Right, yeah, totally.
That happened.
Yeah. It did happen, and it happened to me, but just in the reverse. I caught some kids when I was like 16 or 17. I caught some teenagers like TPing my house, but I thought it was people like trying to rob me, and I went out there with the tube from the vacuum cleaner and ended up chasing them off with it. Okay,
and were they like, the bearded phantom, he's real?
I was young. I just had sick 90s sideburns at the time.
The sideburn phantom, he's real. It's not the same. I don't know.
All right, so one of them, an elderly woman, invited them over to do research. She excused herself from the room to make some tea for everybody.
Okay.
And came back with a frying pan, yelling at them that they were intruders to get out of their house.
Oh, gosh. Wow. Yeah, because when you're a paranormal investigator, you can't, turn down someone who seems obviously crazy. Because, if someone's legitimately being haunted, of course they're going to appear crazy. Yeah,
that's
how can you possibly tell the difference?
Yeah. Oh, yes. Yeah.
So, and, maybe a lot of your cases are people who seem very normal and upstanding, but you can't tell. Maybe those guys are the crazy ones. You've got to interact with a lot of people who are untethered enough from reality to possibly be violent. So I can see how this would be worrisome.
Right. Well, at the risk of getting a little too serious, my daughter told me about some person she wasn't really friends with any longer that she thinks is kind of crazy.
Right.
That this person told my daughter that this other guy basically had done shady stuff to her. And my daughter was automatically not believing the girl that she thinks is crazy. And I had to remind my daughter, Bad stuff happens to the crazy ones too, and maybe more often.
Yeah.
So you better take
often.
this with a grain of salt and take it into consideration. So,
yeah.
Even the crazy ones, it's like, look at, what was the possession of the one about the old lady? It's like a found footage movie about the grandmother who has Alzheimer's that they think might be possessed. It's really freaky.
That kind of sounds like what these researchers were dealing with.
Yeah.
What with frying pan attack and all.
Yeah, it was really freaky though. Good movie, but
if ghosts only haunt the perfectly sane, then I guess that proves once and for all that they're not real.
Yeah. So getting owner approval to investigate an abandoned house to find it at night occupied by drugged up squatters. Of course, that's the one we already saw.
Makes sense,
coming.
yeah.
Paranormal investigators will sometimes encounter people who report seeing demons or hearing voices, but the afflicted person's problem is mental, not paranormal. Which is really...
That's another tricky one.
Schizophrenia.
Yeah.
I have known a guy who, due to hearing... So we talked on the show before about schizophrenia and religion.
Sure.
And that in other countries, they don't deal with religion and schizophrenia like we do. And I have known a guy who, due to hearing voices and thinking about his sins, thought an eye for an eye and physically with his own hand pulled his eyeball out.
Ooh.
Yeah.
Eesh.
Is that not wild?
That's upsetting.
It makes you think that a lot of these calls maybe are people who, especially when you start moving into the realm of possession, exorcism,
well, this is why
religious.
This is why, like, priests. This is why, like, the Catholic Church is so strict on, like, we can only do exorcisms in, like, these crazily specific circumstances.
Right.
And even then, they've been accused of, like, exploiting the mentally ill. Which, with, I think, some justification, because, like, really, how can you tell the difference between possession or someone who's just, like, really mentally ill? I guess if they're levitating or something. But that's the only thing I can think of. Like,
well,
otherwise,
and
how
plus
would
we know
you know?
Mental illness exists. We don't
Exactly.
know that possession
Exactly.
even is a thing, But
so
these priests are pretty convinced. So maybe they're mentally ill,
Yeah. Or,
if one mentally ill person takes advantage of another mentally ill person, who's at fault?
God.
Great. Great answer.
Freaking God.
Yeah, this one I thought was wild that it never crossed my mind. Black mold, toxic dust, rodents carrying diseases, offering paranormal investigators often encounter while investigating old buildings and historic sites.
That makes sense, like the Haunting of Hill House. The black mold.
Oh, yeah. Well, I mean, yeah. Sentient black death mold.
I mean, yeah, there were also, the conglomerated ghosts of the house trying to drive them to, murder their children with rat poison.
Right.
Spoilers.
Right. Well, it's been out longer than 6 months, right?
Yeah.
Isn't that our cutoff?
Is that our cutoff?
I think that's...
Okay, it's fine. Yeah, 6 months seems reasonable.
So I hadn't thought of that, or asbestos.
Oh, gosh, yeah.
One investigator fell off an icy roof because he was so preoccupied with setting up a camera. And another was electrocuted by a dangling wire. And it says that multiple paranormal investigators die a year
just
from
exploring.
Accidents and messed up stuff like this.
Well, that makes sense. It's not surprising.
Yeah.
I never really thought about it, but hearing it, I'm like, well, yeah, there's some risks to going into... It is weird that they died setting up the camera, but, accidents happen.
Yeah.
But especially if you're going into, like, abandoned buildings, there's a reason you're not supposed to do that.
Spelunker
Yeah,
style.
exactly.
Yeah.
Those people die too.
Right.
Sometimes.
All right. Well, you're listening to Radio Wasteland. When we come back, we're going to do some more stuff. So, paranormal investigators, stay safe out there.